See, I think when Otto Porter, when he'll be in the right situation, especially a team like San Antonio or Houston, I think he'd play really well there. I mean, he's shown this year his November has been a lot better than his October was. He's shooting a much higher percentage than he was than he is in this month. So it's probably just a slow start for him. He's still a real good player.
That's what that's the point I was trying to make. Obviously, I do think that a trade that if the Spurs traded for Otto Porter now, it would make them a better team. Now, I don't know myself if I'm the GM, I'm making the deal just because I don't think adding Otto Porter. Obviously, I think it kind of maybe not assures them, but it definitely helps their chances with making the playoffs. But it doesn't make you guys, they're not gonna beat the Warriors or beat the Raptors or the Bucks. Anyway, let's just go with this. Who do the Spurs have to give up?
So I'm thinking.
Now, obviously, they have to give up a contract here, so probably Pau Gasol.
Definitely Paul Gasol. No, not probably. He's the only one that's like on a real high contract. That, I mean, he's playing again. He's playing decent, but he is what he is especially at his age. So I mean, you have either Paul Gasol, then you could either throw in a Patty Mills or Rudy Gay to make contracts match. I don't think they want to throw in Rudy Gay. He's been playing well, so I'll say a Patty Mills, Paul Gasol. You could probably Lonnie Walker and Toronto's first round pick.
You think that's enough? I mean,
yes.
Because I think if you're the Spurs, you do that in a heartbeat.
Again, it's up to Washington to decide what they want to do. I'm sure if they could find a taker for John Wall's contract before they trade away Porter, then all of a sudden, if they do that, if they're able to find a taker for John Wall's contract, then I think if Otto Porter becomes just a little bit more valuable to them, because of the amount of money they're saving by trading away John Wall. But if not, you have to get rid of one of those players. And all of a sudden, they become a little more desperate to trade away Otto Porter. And so, yeah, I think it's enough. Unless they're willing to pay the luxury tax for a rebuilding team. I don't think any owner would be willing to do that. I mean, again, this is one. I mean, there'll probably be an episode in the near future where we focus a little more on the Wizards situation. We may be a little late, but when it becomes closer to the deadline, it'll make more sense for the Wizards to really consider this rebuild.
I would just say that the only thing I would add, instead of a Patty Mills, if you are Washington, you rather take a guy like Bertans, who has, and then the salaries would still work.
Salaries would work, yes, that makes sense.
Because you take a Bertans, who is younger, you're paying much less money than Patty Mills. He's got less year on the contract because Patty Mills has 3 years left, while Bertans is only the next 2 years. And I still think if you're the Spurs and the deal is Lonnie Walker, Davis Bertans, Gasol, and that Toronto pick, which is probably going to be 28, 29, 30. I still think you do this deal for Otto Porter just because of what your goals are right now. Now, I personally wouldn't do the deal because I would have different goals. But for the goals that the Spurs have, I think they go on and they would do this deal.
Yeah, and that's why, again, we'll see how many teams are willing to accept that contract onto their team. He makes sense for a lot of teams. And if a handful of teams are willing to take on that contract, now all of a sudden there'll be a little more bidding for his services. So teams may be jacking up their prices just a little bit higher and higher. So it'll be interesting to see. But as of right now, I think Washington, especially if they don't get an opportunity to trade John Wall, I think they'll be looking to shed as much of his salary as they can, even if the return is not as high. I want to touch on New Orleans. New Orleans is another team that's pretty desperate to win right now. They're looking to get into the playoffs. They have a solid team in terms of talent. They're struggling to put it all together. I don't know. I don't really understand why, because I really like I'm assuming it's more because of their depth, but I really like the talent that they have, especially at the top with with Davis, with Mirotic, with Randall. But, they're 10-11 right now, and just they have a real good offense. It's hard to explain. So, what do you think? Who do you think is someone that they could use, that they could trade for?
Now, I've always talked about how Otto Porter would be the perfect fit here, in my opinion. I don't, when it comes, Otto Porter, I think would be one guy. It'd be nice if they can add a Bradley Beal, but I just don't see, them being able to put together the package. Maybe it would be worth it to throw an Anthony Davis, like a James Harden style package where you offer 3-4 first round picks in the future or something like that, just to try to keep Anthony Davis happy, because I do think a Bradley Beal and an Anthony Davis fitting would be really good.
Yeah, but you said Bradley Beal?
Yeah, if you're doing Bradley Beal.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, they could offer Randall or Mirotic. Again, I'd probably take Randall over Mirotic just because of their age. But you're right. I mean, the offering 3 future first-round picks, especially where New Orleans stands now, that might not be the worst thing because for Washington, to take on because of the fact that they're not that good and so far. And if Anthony Davis leaves, all of a sudden those picks become a little more valuable. Now, that would be the one risk that New Orleans would be taking in this situation is that...
Yeah, I mean, the argument there is that Anthony Davis is worth that risk.
Yeah, and obviously, you're right about that. So that's an interesting scenario to throw out there. I guess it would also similarly depend on what other teams are throwing at the Wizards to get Bradley Beal. Because you'd still have to make salaries match here. So you could make salaries match with Solomon Hill and E'Twaun Moore, but you would have to throw in someone with at least some talent, either a Randall or a Mirotic.
Yeah, one of those players would definitely have to be in the deal. I think, I think you could entice. I mean, the Wizards would probably rather have Randall, just like you said earlier, the age would work better. But, I think this would be a deal that I think would be worth the risk for New Orleans, because I do think a backcourt of Jrue Holiday and Bradley Beal to go along with the front court of Anthony Davis, Nikola Mirotic, and hopefully somebody maybe Wesley Johnson or an E'Twaun Moore. I think that'd be at least the starting 5 would be really good. I mean, obviously there's going to be problems on the bench of this team, but it's one of those things that I say that you just kind of see if Wizards are doing, just so you can see if you can keep Anthony Davis happy as a Pelican.
All right, so here's another name I'm going to throw out to you, and Tim Hardaway Jr. from New York. Now, he's averaging about 23 points a game, which is really good. Now, his shooting is about 40% from the field, 37% from the three-point line. So he's shooting a good percentage from the three-point line, not as much from the field. So do you take a chance? I mean, here's a guy who has 3 years left on his contract, including this year. Now, his third year is a player option, so more than likely he's exercising it unless he's playing that good that he thinks he could earn more. He's got 3 years left on his contract. This year he's making about $17 million. So theoretically, New Orleans could throw a package of E'Twaun Moore, who's got 2 years left on his contract at a little over $8 million. Wesley Johnson, who's on an expiring contract, and maybe an Elfrid Payton, who's on an expiring contract. So New York, whose goal is to bring in a star free agent this offseason, would be shedding themselves of $10 million, not to mention an additional year of Tim Hardaway. But now, again, you'd have to throw definitely probably at least a first-round pick, maybe a little more. At what point now, and this is interesting because should New York do this? And that's what's interesting. Should New York trade Tim Hardaway now with the way he's been playing? Or should they hold on to him and see what happens when Kristaps Porzingis gets back and wait to see what they could do in free agency? Is this something New York risks? And is this someone that the Pelicans to take on for an E'Twaun Moore, Elfrid Payton, and Wesley Johnson, plus let's say a first-round pick? A first round, maybe not unprotected, but only top 10 protected with the way Tim Hardaway's been playing with 3 years left on his contract.
I mean, I think to get rid of Tim, I understand he's been playing well, but again, to me, this is a good stats on a bad team. I'm not very happy. I'm not super impressed with his playing. I think if he was to go to a team like New Orleans, his stats would obviously go down. So I don't think the New York Knicks should be worried about losing Tim Hardaway, especially if they can gain, they gain more salary room. And you said a pick?
Yeah, okay, and maybe a pick, maybe a little more protection on it, lottery protected.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely worth it. I mean, you're not only are you losing shedding that salary, you're also getting a pick. I don't see why you wouldn't do that. And again, Etwan Moore isn't as good of a player as Tim Hardaway Jr., but Etwan Moore's having a decent year.
He is. He's a solid 3-point shooter. He really is.
And Tim Hardaway, it would be interesting to see if he would, help the New Orleans Pelicans. Like, would he might be making that much of a difference when compared to Etwan Moore? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that's the question they would have to ask themselves. Like, well, how much of a difference could he make? And at this point, I mean, this seems just very similar to the situation, for example, the Cavs were with the first time LeBron James was about to leave. They were just essentially acquiring anyone they could. I mean, for Christ's sakes, they went out and got, 37-year-old Shaquille O'Neal just to get some type of name. Now, I mean, this would be a little different, obviously, because Tim Hardaway Jr. is a lot younger. So he, again, theoretically makes more sense. But it would be a decision they would have to make. Personally, if I'm the Pelicans, maybe I throw a 2020 first round pick at them instead of a 2019. Now, again, you're risking something there because what if Davis demands a trade and it becomes a new Jimmy Butler situation? So there's just, it's a lot. But like you said, if you're the Knicks, you do it. I'd probably do it too. But if I'm the Pelicans, I probably do it if there's nothing else out there just because you need to show. I mean, and you could wait till the offseason to do it as well. I mean, Tim Hardaway will be available then just as much as he is now. So you could wait till the offseason if you're the Pelicans.
Yeah, I mean, I also think the argument is really easy to be made here. If you're going to get Kevin Durant to come play with New York, I think it'd be much easier if you have enough space that you could even get a Kemba Walker or a Kyrie Irving to join him. Like, then you could really persuade Kevin Durant. Do I believe Kevin Durant's going to go by himself to play with Kristaps? These young players, nice young assets are nice, and you have Alonzo Trio who's coming up and playing pretty well. But I don't know if Kevin Durant wants to be the only guy there. But I do think if you have a Kemba or a Kyrie, it'd be much easier to get Kevin Durant, and the only way you can do that is you'd have to shed that Hardaway salary, and you'd have to find a suitor for Courtney Lee, which is going to be much easier because his salary is much smaller.
I want to throw one more name out there, and I think he would make a lot of sense for New Orleans more than these other teams. But D'Angelo Russell, if he should become available, I mean, again, Brooklyn's in a similar situation where they're looking to shed salary, and now D'Angelo Russell's cap hold will be pretty high. I've heard rumblings that I should say I've read rumblings that Brooklyn may not be interested in bringing him back regardless of whether they're able to acquire a big-name free agent or not. So if D'Angelo Russell should become available on the trade market, if Brooklyn really looks to trade him, how would you feel about New Orleans acquiring him for maybe, I mean, again, it sucks, but you always, I mean, a first-round pick, a heavier protected first-round pick that maybe conveys into 2 second-round picks. Should they not meet those protections? Should they not fall within the protected range, or should it fall within the protected range?
Yeah, I mean, do I necessarily like the fit well with Drew Holiday? No, but I do think D'Angelo Russell is he's worth the type of. I think New Orleans is in a situation where they just have to kind of go all in on the Anthony Davis and really figure out by this summer, if not by the trade deadline, and what if you're gonna trade Anthony Davis or not? So do you make a trade for D'Angelo Russell now? If you could, yeah, you do. I do think you can get the most value for Anthony Davis if you trade him during the trade deadline this year, just because it gives that team another guaranteed year that they could take Anthony Davis to the playoffs. So I do think, if you're going to trade Anthony Davis, it'd be smartest to trade him before February of this year. So if you make this deal for D'Angelo Russell now, see if it works out. If it works out, and Anthony Davis, it looks like you're gonna, be a 3 or 4 seed in the playoffs, then you work with it. And if it doesn't, who cares? He's not too much of a salary hit. If you're just gonna be giving up because obviously in this deal you wouldn't include an Etwan Moore because Brooklyn would want to, if they want to shed salaries, they're not going to take E'Twaun Moore, who's shed salaries for 2 years.
No, it'd probably be a Wesley Johnson because their salaries match.
So if you're giving up with Wesley Johnson and a pick, for D'Angelo Russell, who was a top 5 pick, and he's not the
number 2 pick.
Number 2 pick. He's not the greatest player in the world, but his PER is about 19 right now. He's shooting, his shooting percentage